Every year, the West Fargo Fire Department conducts an annual report, and it's an assessment of everything we've done all year, and we're providing the best possible services for our community. In 2020, our average response times across the city, across all 6 planning zones, were 6 minutes and 14 seconds for emergency medical calls for service and 6 minutes 35 seconds for fire calls service. That's a bit over the NFPA standard, and we know that is the case, and that is why we have gone to the commission and been approved to purchase land and build a new fire station that will be manned 24 hours a day in the northern part of the city. It was a very unique year. We had 2,186 calls for service compared to 2,133 the year prior. This is the first year ever that we've broken 1,000 fire, rescue, and public service calls. That is a huge number. And those numbers 5 years ago were in like 350, and 10 years ago were 200 or below. And now we're looking at 1,000. So that's a really good baseline to look at the growth of the city and to look at our staffing levels to make sure that we're doing the best we can for the community. This past year, we've also added a 4-legged member to our department. Micah, our accelerant detection canine, has been used exclusively in the metro area to investigate fires for signs of accelerant. We do know that arson for profit is the #1 motive of arson throughout the United States, and it helps reduce insurance fraud. We were able to have our canine handler, Fire Inspector John Mead, trained, and we're able to get Micah through a grant through State Farm Insurance. We provide Micah as a tool for area fire departments throughout the metro and into other parts of North Dakota and Minnesota as needed and as requested to help find and eliminate insurance fraud and arson cases. Throughout 2020, we did call back off-duty and on-call firefighters 144 times. And 55 of those times, there was second and third calls for service that occurred as that first call was ongoing. We were able to keep a low response time by proactively calling those firefighters back to the station whenever the full-time firefighting crew was tied up on a call. It resulted in a reduction of fire losses. It resulted in good outcomes for emergency medical calls for service, and it resulted in an increased level of public service to our community. Fire loss this past year went from 2.3% to 1%. We had just about $74 million in property that was affected by fire, and we had $722,000 in total property loss. We know that overwhelmingly 2/3 of the people that we provided emergency medical services to last year were over the age of 65. And we also know that the top 2 provider impressions were trauma and respiratory distress. We saw a lot of people sick in our community with COVID-19, and those calls came in as respiratory distress, or unfortunately some of those calls came in as obvious deaths in the home. Our drone team has grown by leaps and bounds. We used drones on more instances in 2020 than ever before. In 2020, we hired a full-time training chief. We've completed over 11,000 hours of training this year, and that's very important to point out that after March, we were not allowed to have group training in our station. So 11,000 hours compared to 11,000 hours the year previous shows that we were resilient and robust in the way that we provide training. In closing, I'd like to thank everyone for reading our annual report, for watching this video, and seeing what we're doing here as a fire department in our community. I believe our department is more entrenched and more intertwined with our community than we have ever been. We're providing more services. We are providing value-added benefits to our community way beyond just responding to fires. And we look forward to what 2021 has to offer.